What's going on, everyone? So, the Atlanta Hawks traded for Kristaps Porzingis as part of a three-team trade, right? With the Brooklyn Nets and the Boston Celtics. Boston basically did the trade just to kind of get under the second apron. All they really got in return was a second-round pick and then George Niang. So, nothing really there. But the big kind of like, hey, that makes some sense, right? Is Atlanta landing Kristaps Porzingis? I really like Kristaps Porzingis on Atlanta because I believe they're a team that can afford to take the gamble, afford to take the risk, right? Kristaps Porzingis is a guy that really is a risk, right? And, Lakers and Spurs and Warriors, they were teams that were linked to Kristaps Porzingis and, had interest in potentially acquiring him. And my problem is that like the guy only gives you like 40 games a year on average. I don't want to see the Lakers trade for a guy like that. If he could stay healthy, he would be beautiful. He would be great, right? Sign me up. Like if I had a crystal ball and I could see, hey, he's going to give me 60 games, nothing crazy, 60 games this year, but he's going to be fully healthy the entirety of the playoffs. Go trade for Kristaps Porzingis right now. But the problem is, I don't believe that you can trust that. But a team like Atlanta, they're young. There isn't really necessarily the expectation of winning a championship this year, right? But so it's a really low risk, high reward for them. If it doesn't work out, you can let them go. And all your guys are all 23 years old anyway, right? So it's not something where it's like LeBron James could retire in a year and it's like you just kind of blew his last chance of winning a championship type thing. So I do think something like that makes a lot of sense. But now with Atlanta, you have Kristaps Porzingis. What is Atlanta going to do with Okongwu? Right? Like, are they going to run both? Are they going to go with Kristaps and Okongwu and kind of go that route? Or is he going to now be on the market? So the Lakers at this past trade deadline tried to trade for Onyeka Okongwu, right? They offered the same package for a Mark Williams, the same thing that they offered Mark Williams, they offered for Okongwu, right? It was him, Jalen Duren, and Mark Williams, and Walker Kessler. And the Charlotte Hornets were the team that bid. Charlotte Hornets were the team that were like, hey, we'll give this up. And so I could see the Lakers potentially offering that up again. Now, you could argue if you're Atlanta, right, to keep him at least, because there is a very good chance that he's starting, even if you are looking to bring him off the bench, there is a very good chance that he is starting at least 40 plus games next season, right? A very good chance. So, if I'm Atlanta, am I necessarily trading him? Obviously, they're going to lose Clint Capella. Clint Capella's departing. They're not going to keep him around. Lakers are one of the teams that is very interested in signing a Clint Capella. Just depends on what would he be willing to, sign for. They do have a couple other guys that could kind of slot in to the center position, but really, Okongwu is the guy that they would ideally have slot in. Now, you could argue maybe you run both because Kristaps Porzingis' ability to stretch the floor. So, just kind of looking at the roster, do they go something with like, I don't know, Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, but you have Rizashea, right? So, Rizashea, Jalen Johnson, and you would think Kristaps Porzingis, right? But are you going to go, maybe Rizashea's coming off the bench and you're going with Jalen Johnson at the 3, and then you're going with Okongwu at the center, and then Kristaps Porzingis at the 5, right? Like, my guess is Okongwu's coming off the bench, right? My guess, because I don't think you're going to go trade for Kristaps Porzingis to then have him come off the bench, right? I think that you're looking to have him, and if you're just looking for a backup, you want a backup, right? The whole point of Okongwu was that like he was your starter. He was really emerging and evolving. He was showing that two-way capability as like that offensive player. He's still incredibly young. He was really starting to take some strides last year. So, what does Atlanta look to do with him? Now, again, maybe Atlanta looks to keep him and, maybe you play both at times, right? And Kristaps Porzingis is playing and starting at the 5, and then at times is slotting maybe 15 minutes at the 4 or whatever, right? There's options there, but with how good Rizashea was kind of coming into his own, right? You're going to have Johnson coming back and into his own, right? Like, I don't know where you make that work if you're Atlanta, right? And look, and Okongwu, it's not something you still have to trade him, right? You still have him. He's cheap, right? Like, but at some point, it's like you're going to need to make a decision on him. At some point, you're going to have to do something. So, like, you look at where he's at right now, right? Contract-wise. So, he's making this year $15 million. Next year, he'll be at 16.1 and then 16.8 million. So, he's not making so much money where it's like, you can't justify him coming off the bench, right? If he was making like 25, 30 million, it'd be like, yeah, like, you're really going to bring that off the bench? Probably not, right? Like Kristaps Porzingis, which is why I think they're going to start Kristaps Porzingis. Where Okongwu, you're looking at like, okay, he's making a basically rotation level money, so we can just have him be a rotation guy. He's 24, he'll be 25, basically a quarter into the season. December 11th, 2000. And last year, he averaged 13.4 points, 9 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 56.7% from the field. Now, he's not a true 7-footer, right? That's something you got to keep in mind. He's 6'10", 240. But again, a guy that just has shown the versatility on the offensive side of things and the defensive side of things. If he does become on the market, what would it cost for the Lakers, right? Can the Lakers get him for the package that they offered Mark Williams, right? Which was Dalton Connect, Dalton Connect, a first, and then I think it was like a pick swap, and then salary filler, right? Because you got to remember he's making 15 plus million. So Dalton Connect isn't enough. So it'd have to be like Dalton Connect and like a Gabe Vincent or something like that. Maybe they would be willing to take Gabe Vincent, right? So maybe you can work something out like that. Look, I don't know if I do the pick swap, but if you told me worst case, is Okongwu worth Connect and a first, essentially 2 firsts, because that's basically what the Lakers got. Is Okongwu worth all of your picks and assets? I do think that there is an argument, yes, like a genuine argument, yes. I would obviously prefer a Walker Kessler or something like that, but I do think, again, in concept, he is the exact type of player you want, right? Athletic, floor runner, the Luka type of center. Can run the floor, can block shots, protect the paint, do all those things, right? Like, he's a guy that, has shown the ability to defend in space, all of that. And like I've always said, I don't mind if a team overpays if it makes sense. If they were to overpay for a Kristaps Porzingis, like, that doesn't make sense. If they were to overpay for a Robert Williams, that doesn't make sense. But, like Mark Williams was looked at as like, oh, that is an overpay by the Lakers. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's justified, right? You're talking about a guy that is literally, 1, teams know you're desperate and need one. 2, right? Like, that might be the piece that sends you over the top, makes you a contender. And 3, you just got your center for the next 10 years alongside Luka. Right? Like, it's the same thing with Okongwu, right? Like, I'm okay with the Lakers if they overpay for him, if they really believe that he is their franchise center. Now, you have your guy for the next 8 to 10 years. Because again, at that point, your 2031 pick, at that point, Luka's probably already phased out. Or by that point, your best case scenario is you're drafting a guy like Okongwu, right? So again, like, I'm okay with the Lakers kind of doing what they need to do in order if they can land the guy that makes sense. Ideally, if you could do Dalton Connect and a like Gabe Vincent and then like 2 pick swaps, right, and keep that first, right, because then you'd still have a bunch of expiring contracts. You'd still have Austin Reeves if you needed to, and you'd still have that first that you can go make some other moves. Because the Lakers don't just need a center, right? They need a center and they need multiple 3-and-D wings. I also like the idea that Okongwu is under contract for 3 more years, counting this year, and the most he'll make is like $16.5 million, right? Because now you basically have the next 3 years to really kind of carve out and get the other players and whatnot. You also have an owner that has deep pockets and is willing to go into the tax and the aprons and all that stuff. So by the time he's ready to have his next contract, hopefully you have the roster hopefully you've won a championship by then, but you also have the roster ready to go and he's ready to get his new contract and all you're doing is just going into the cap, right? Like that would kind of be the ideal scenario. But you look at last year, right? Because last year was his big emergence year. That was the year that he had the best. I played the most minutes, all of that. Played 74 games, started in 40 of them. A little more than half. Averaged 28 minutes per game, 9.2 field goal attempts, shot 56.7% from the field. Shot on 2 attempts from three-point range, 32.4%, which isn't great, but again, he's 24 years old and showed the ability, and that was the first year he actually took real attempts. He took 1.3 the previous year with Atlanta and shot 33%. So far in the 2 years that he started really taking threes, right? Again, small sample size, 1.5 and then 2, but started taking threes. He's been around 33%, right? So if that can continue to grow and develop, that would be huge. Not saying he has to be 40 or anything like that, but if can he get to 36%, that would be huge. 2-point range, 63.4%, 60% EFG, shot 76% from the foul line on 3 attempts, averaged 8.9 rebounds, including 3 offensive rebounds, 2.3 assists, a steal, a block, and 13.4 points. Again, and this was in 28 minutes of action. You look at his per 36, which again doesn't tell you the whole story, but kind of gives you an idea. He would be 17, 12, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks. And to kind of add to things, they played one of the last games that he played. He had or the last 5 he actually was really good, but he had a 30-14 game. He also had a 28-12 game, right in the heart of the end of the season. So really had some kind of monster games there towards the end. So just something to kind of keep an eye on. Does that mean that maybe he's available? We'll see. Time will tell. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question on you. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. So we enjoy these types of videos and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.